Elon Musk, I decided to sell all my possessions. Here's why. Elon Musk's voice came through with a tone that was both firm and reflective. I have decided to sell all my possessions, he said, pausing just long enough to let the words sink in. Here's why. His declaration carried the kind of weight that only Elon could deliver, direct, unapologetic, and laced with a deeper meaning that demanded exploration. The room, though filled with quiet murmurs of disbelief, seemed to shrink around him. It wasn't just about possessions. It was about philosophy, vision, and the relentless pursuit of something greater than material comfort. From the outside, many saw Elon as a man of wealth, cars, houses, companies, fame. But behind those things lived a restless spirit, one driven not by luxury but by mission. His gaze seemed to stretch beyond the boundaries of the earth itself, as though the walls, the cameras, the observers, all were simply obstacles between him and the stars. He leaned back slightly, as if remembering something that only he could fully grasp. Possessions can become anchors, he continued. They weigh you down. They tie you to places, to routines, to limitations. But I don't want to be anchored. I want to be free to focus entirely on building a future that matters, for humanity, not just for myself. Those words struck like lightning. Freedom, after all, wasn't about collecting more. It was about letting go. And so began a journey, not just of Elon's life, but of a new kind of testament to vision. What does it mean for a man to shed the very things society tells him to find success? Why would someone at the peak of worldly achievement willingly step down from its gilded throne to live lighter, leaner, closer to the essence of his mission? The answer wasn't simple. It was layered, mystical even. Elon's decision reverberated beyond his immediate circle. Some mocked him, calling it a publicity stunt. Others felt threatened, as though his act of letting go cast a mirror back upon their own clinging to things. And then there were those who leaned in, intrigued, sensing that he was revealing something profound about life itself. Imagine, for a moment, the vast estates he once owned. Expansive homes with walls of glass that stretched toward California sunsets. Rooms filled with artwork, furniture, and quiet echoes of footsteps. To most, these would be sanctuaries of comfort. To Elon, they had become distractions. They demanded care, energy, thought, all things he would rather invest in rockets, electric cars, and AI systems that might save civilization. The first house went on the market, and the world watched. Then the second. And the third. He wasn't half-hearted about this decision. It was a purge, a cleansing of sorts. The man who had become a billionaire through disruption was now disrupting himself. Why? Because to him, the future wasn't built in living rooms, it was built in factories, laboratories, and launch pads. It wasn't born of marble countertops but of molten steel, forged in flames and stress tests, welded together by sleepless engineers chasing impossible dreams. This was his truth, the weight of possessions pulled against the wings of ambition. And Elon Musk wanted to fly. People began to ask, but Elon, don't you need comfort? Don't you need a home, a place of retreat? His reply was disarmingly simple: I'll rent when I need to. I'll stay where I must. But I don't need to own it. I don't want my energy spent maintaining things. I want all of it on Mars, on Tesla, on the future. That statement peeled back a deeper layer of who Elon Musk really was. To many, success equates to accumulation. To him, success was acceleration, pushing humanity forward faster than it could collapse under its own weight. And yet, there was something spiritual about this decision too. The great teachers of history often spoke of renouncing attachment. Buddha walked away from his palace. Jesus had no place to lay his head. Great visionaries understood that one cannot carry the burden of both worldly possessions and world-transforming missions. Something has to give. Elon wasn't claiming sainthood, but his actions echoed those timeless truths. In shedding the excess, he was not just freeing himself, he was creating a symbol, a reminder that wealth without purpose is hollow. When you strip a man of his possessions, what remains? His ideas. His vision. His will. And Elon's will was immense. At night, when others slept in their sprawling mansions, Elon often rested in a small room near a Tesla factory, or even on a couch in his office. To him, proximity to work mattered more than chandeliers or velvet pillows. The hum of machines was more comforting than the silence of luxury. The glow of screens displaying data more meaningful than art on a wall. He wasn't homeless. He was mission-bound. To live lighter was to live faster. To live without excess was to live without distraction. And for Elon Musk, distraction was the true enemy of progress. Now, let me take you into the heart of this philosophy, because what Elon demonstrated here isn't just about houses or cars, it's about every one of us. Think of your own life. How many things do you carry that you don't need? How many possessions fill your space but do little to fill your soul? How many anchors are tied to your ankles, keeping you from chasing your wildest dreams? Elon's decision was a wake-up call, not just for him but for humanity. A reminder that sometimes the path forward requires subtraction, not addition. It requires letting go of the visible in order to chase the invisible. And this is where the story deepens, because selling possessions wasn't just about personal choice. It was about sending a message to the world, that humanity's future cannot be bought with luxury. It must be earned through sacrifice, focus, and relentless drive. As the first possessions left his hands, reporters followed every move. Critics argued. Supporters admired. But through it all, Elon never wavered. He knew something most couldn't see, that the greatest treasure was not in holding, but in building. He smiled when people asked him if he missed his old homes. No, he would say, his eyes gleaming. I'm building a home on Mars. And in that sentence lay the key. Earthly possessions mattered little when compared to the grand vision of interplanetary civilization. To him, a bed in a small house was enough, as long as the rockets kept climbing, as long as the dream kept burning. Because when your eyes are fixed on the stars, the ground beneath your feet becomes less important. Elon Musk's decision to sell everything wasn't made in a single night, nor was it the result of a fleeting thought. It was born out of years of wrestling with the meaning of progress, freedom, and what it truly meant to dedicate a life to something larger than oneself. He had walked through grand homes, halls filled with rare artifacts and art, only to realize that every polished surface and every perfectly arranged object seemed to whisper the same distraction: stay here, enjoy comfort, slow down, bask in what you already have. But Elon could not stay. He could not bask. He could not slow down. The earth itself, in his eyes, was a fragile place. He often spoke of it as a cradle, beautiful, yes, but temporary. Humanity was not meant to remain confined forever. The vision of Mars colonization wasn't science fiction to him, it was survival, inevitability, destiny. And if his mission was to carry the species beyond this planet, then why should he cling to the very trappings of it? He said once, in an unguarded moment, "I don't want people to think I'm rich because I own things. I want them to see that I'm rich because I'm giving everything I have, every ounce of energy, to build the future." It wasn't about detachment for its own sake. It was about alignment. If every action, every choice, every moment of his life was to serve humanity's next chapter, then possessions had no place in that equation. Imagine the people around him, friends, colleagues, even family, looking on in wonder. Some thought he was overextending himself. Others thought he was becoming too radical. But those closest to Elon understood that this was not a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. One evening, while engineers worked late at SpaceX, Elon sat with a group of them, eating something simple out of a paper container.
The warehouse air smelled of oil, metal, and determination. One of the younger engineers asked him, almost hesitantly, "Don't you ever want to just rest? Have a place where everything is calm, peaceful, away from all this pressure?" Elon looked up, his expression thoughtful. Then he gave a small smile. "Peace doesn't come from marble floors. It comes from knowing you're doing the most you can with the time you have." That answer lingered long after the food was gone. It was the kind of truth that couldn't be measured in dollars, but it was priceless. There is something undeniably magnetic about watching someone walk away from everything that others chase. When Elon sold his last house, many couldn't comprehend it. How could one of the richest men alive choose to live without the very symbols of wealth? But therein lay the paradox. Elon never saw wealth as something to display, it was something to deploy. Wealth was fuel. And fuel sitting idle is wasted. Only when it is burned does it create thrust. For Elon, his possessions were idle. His vision, however, was a rocket demanding fuel. And so he poured everything into it. But there was another layer to this choice. Possessions don't just anchor, they separate. They create distance. A billionaire behind gates and walls can seem untouchable, unreachable, alien to the struggles of ordinary people. By letting go, Elon was stepping closer to the very humanity he was trying to serve. No one could say, "Easy for you to talk about sacrifice from your mansion." He had stripped that argument away with his own hands. His message became clearer: I am not above you. I am with you. I am sacrificing too. And when leaders sacrifice, their vision becomes more believable. In interviews after his decision, some reporters pressed him. "Isn't this dangerous? What if something goes wrong? What if you regret not having a safe space to fall back on?" His answer was almost a whisper, yet it carried the force of a lifetime of conviction. "If I fail, possessions won't save me. And if I succeed, possessions won't matter." That single line captured the essence of his worldview. Safety wasn't found in walls or deeds or keys. Safety, to him, was in momentum, in pushing forward so relentlessly that failure had no place to rest. For those who followed his journey, there was a lesson woven into every step. Letting go isn't easy. It confronts us with our fears, of loss, of instability, of the unknown. But Elon's story was showing, in real time, that release could be the greatest form of empowerment. Ask yourself, what would you build if nothing weighed you down? What dream would you chase if you weren't protecting the things you already had? What vision would light up your life if you dared to trade comfort for calling? That was the mirror Elon held up to the world. And though not everyone would sell their homes or walk away from possessions, everyone could feel the stir of that question in their own soul. There were nights when he would sleep near the hum of machines, nights when his only comfort was knowing that the rockets outside were closer to flight than they had been the day before. He would often walk through the factory floor late at night, running his hands along the cold steel of rocket bodies, whispering as if speaking to a future not yet born. Soon, he would say softly, "We'll get there soon." He didn't need walls of a mansion. He needed walls of a launch hangar. He didn't need chandeliers. He needed engines that roared with power. He didn't need luxury carpets. He needed launch pads. And so he traded one world for another, willingly, purposefully. The decision to sell everything wasn't about minimalism as a lifestyle trend. It wasn't about joining a movement or making a statement against materialism in some abstract way. For Elon, it was about optimization. He had optimized rockets, batteries, factories. Now he was optimizing himself. Every ounce of unnecessary weight had to go. Every resource not aligned with the mission had to be redirected. Every distraction had to be dismantled. Because the mission demanded everything. Elon's choice to divest himself of nearly everything wasn't just a practical decision, it was an existential one. It forced him to confront the question that haunts every human being in one form or another: what truly matters? In the quiet moments of reflection, Elon often thought about the billions of people tied to possessions, routines, and conventions that offered little beyond fleeting comfort. He wondered how many of them were dreaming of leaving the Earth, exploring new worlds, or pushing humanity forward, but felt shackled by the weight of what they owned. Possessions, he realized, were not inherently bad. They could provide convenience, security, and enjoyment. But when they start dictating priorities, consuming attention, or distracting from larger purpose, they become a prison. And Elon Musk refused to be imprisoned, not by society, not by expectations, not by wealth itself. As the weeks passed and the sales continued, Elon began noticing subtle changes within himself. A sense of lightness, almost physical, replaced what he described as invisible chains. Decisions felt clearer. His focus sharpened. And even more remarkably, his team began to feel it too. Engineers, designers, and executives reported that meetings were more energetic, discussions more focused, and ideas flowing faster. They joked that the absence of a mansion Elon somehow made the presence of mission Elon far more palpable. It was, in essence, a ripple effect. One man's radical act of letting go began to influence everyone around him, encouraging a culture of prioritization, of clarity, of fearless pursuit of mission. There were skeptics, of course. Analysts questioned whether giving up material comfort might impair decision-making. Psychologists warned of emotional strain. Business commentators speculated about image, reputation, even mental stability. But Elon welcomed the scrutiny. He knew that the louder the voices of doubt, the more important it was to persist. If innovation and disruption were ever easy, they would be commonplace. But the act of selling everything, of unshackling oneself from possession, was neither easy nor comfortable, it was transformational. And that transformation wasn't just about work. It was about mindset, values, and resilience. He began each day with fewer distractions and more deliberate intention. Instead of waking in a sprawling bedroom with endless choices of comfort, he woke where it mattered most, close to the work that would determine the trajectory of humanity's future. There was also a spiritual dimension to this shift. Elon didn't necessarily frame it in religious terms publicly, but internally he understood that attachment to things could cloud judgment, misalign priorities, and divert energy away from purpose. By releasing ownership, he was creating space, mental, emotional, and even spiritual, for focus, insight, and creativity to flourish. Many of his closest confidants noticed a subtle glow in him, a quiet certainty, a serene determination that hadn't been there before. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't ego. It was a profound alignment between action, mission, and identity. And for Elon Musk, alignment was everything. As his possessions dwindled, Elon's conversations shifted too. He no longer discussed square footage or luxury amenities. He spoke of orbital trajectories, battery efficiency, AI ethics, and interplanetary logistics. He spoke of humanity's destiny as if it were a living, breathing entity, fragile, ambitious, and in desperate need of shepherding. People began listening differently. Investors, journalists, engineers, all recognized that when a person willingly abandons comfort for clarity, the authenticity of their vision is amplified. There is no pretense, no posturing, no hidden agenda. Just pure, relentless pursuit. But it wasn't always easy. The world, after all, clings to symbols. Houses, cars, yachts, these were markers of status, credibility, and accomplishment. Letting them go drew criticism from some and disbelief from others. Friends questioned, "Isn't it lonely?" Family asked, "Where will you live?" To which Elon responded, almost teasingly, "I live where my work is. I sleep where my dreams are made real. If I feel lonely, it's because the future is calling, and I am answering." It was more than rhetoric. It was lived truth. And then came the moments of public scrutiny that really tested him. Late-night shows, social media platforms, and opinion columns buzzed with curiosity and doubt. Memes circulated, Elon Musk standing in an empty home, sleeping on a couch, or piloting a Tesla alone. Some mocked. Some admired. But through it all, Elon remained steadfast. The opinions of others were irrelevant to the mission. The only thing that mattered was purpose, and nothing, not criticism, not ridicule, not the clamor of society, could dilute that. Elon also began experimenting with minimalism in ways that went beyond possessions. Travel became simpler, routines more disciplined, meetings shorter and more focused. Every aspect of his life was tested against a single principle: does this contribute to humanity's future? If it did, it remained. If it didn't, it was eliminated. Over time, this led to a remarkable clarity of thought. Decisions that once seemed complex became straightforward. Priorities became obvious. Distractions fell away like leaves in autumn. And with clarity came acceleration. In conversations with his engineers, Elon sometimes described the feeling as lightspeed focus. He compared it to a rocket shedding fuel tanks during ascent. Every unnecessary ounce left behind meant more speed, more height, more momentum. Possessions, in his metaphor, were ballast. By letting go, he was free to reach escape velocity, not just in spacecraft, but in human achievement. This metaphor wasn't lost on his team. Engineers began thinking differently about their own work. They questioned unnecessary processes, inefficient designs, and even personal habits that weighed them down. Elon's personal philosophy had become a catalyst for collective transformation. And yet, there was still a deeply personal dimension. At night, when the city lights dimmed and the hum of factories was the only sound, Elon sometimes allowed himself a moment of reflection. Did he miss anything? Did he feel the pull of the past? Rarely. When he did, he noticed that the feelings were not about the objects themselves, they were about memories, connections, and experiences tied to them. But he understood that memories could be kept without keeping the things themselves. Stories, photographs, and the impact of one's actions mattered far more than furniture or art or luxury cars. It was a lesson he hoped others could learn too: hold on to experiences, not objects. Hold on to meaning, not things. Hold on to vision, not possessions. As Elon continued to live with almost nothing, the world began to notice subtle shifts, not only in his life, but in the culture surrounding him. Reporters, investors, and the public alike began framing him differently. He was no longer simply the eccentric billionaire with a penchant for bold statements. He was becoming the living embodiment of a principle that few dared to test: purpose over possession. People started asking themselves uncomfortable questions. If Elon Musk could give up everything society told him he needed, what was truly necessary for their own lives? Was it the sprawling mansion, the luxury car, the latest gadget, or was it something far more intangible: vision, passion, courage? Elon, of course, never claimed to be a role model. Yet every step he took reverberated. The image of him moving from one small, minimalist space to another, focusing entirely on projects that could change humanity, became almost symbolic, a statement louder than words could express. This radical lifestyle had unexpected effects on his companies. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company felt the shift. When the CEO and founder removes personal distractions, energy flows differently. Decisions were made faster, priorities clarified, and meetings became sharper. Employees described a new intensity, a sense that every hour spent in the office counted for something profoundly significant. Elon didn't need the adoration of the press or the accolades of the rich. He needed results. And in giving up everything, he gained something infinitely more powerful: freedom to focus, freedom to experiment, freedom to fail fast and iterate faster. The spiritual undertones of his choice were also profound. While not religious in the conventional sense, Elon often reflected on the nature of attachment and purpose. He understood, intuitively, that clinging to material things could cloud judgment, sap energy, and dilute ambition. By detaching, he wasn't rejecting the world, he was embracing it in a purer, more essential form. Late at night, when he wandered through the quiet of a nearly empty home or a simple rented room, he sometimes whispered to himself about humanity's destiny. The words were not for anyone else, they were affirmations of alignment. They were reminders that a life tethered too tightly to comfort could never fully answer the call of vision. Public perception began to shift as well. Initially, media outlets framed Elon's choices as eccentric or reckless. Social media was a storm of memes, debates, and speculation. Has Elon Musk lost his mind? Some asked. Is this a PR stunt? Others wondered. But gradually, as the weeks turned into months, a deeper understanding emerged. People began to see the logic in what many had dismissed as madness. In giving up everything that weighed him down, Elon had created more room to act, to create, to innovate. The message was clear: the trappings of wealth are optional. Purpose is not. Elon's personal relationships also adapted to this shift. Friends and colleagues noticed that his interactions had become more grounded, more authentic. Without the distractions of luxury, conversations focused on ideas, on solutions, on mission. Time spent with him became time invested in progress, and those who engaged with him felt its intensity. Even family understood, eventually, that this wasn't rejection. It was prioritization. It was the act of saying, I will give everything I have to the mission, and the mission is bigger than any single person. The human side of this story was not without struggle. There were nights of doubt, moments when the absence of familiar comforts felt sharp. There were times when Elon missed the warmth of personal spaces, the privacy of familiar surroundings. But each moment of longing became a meditation, a reflection on what was truly necessary. He realized that desire for possessions is often desire for identity. I am my house, I am my car, I am my title, people say unconsciously. By stripping away these markers, Elon had no choice but to confront who he really was, and what he really stood for. And who he was, more than anything, was a builder. A dreamer. A relentless pursuer of humanity's next frontier. With every personal object sold, every room emptied, and every luxury given up, his focus sharpened. SpaceX rockets took precedence over private jets. Tesla factories mattered more than sprawling estates. Neuralink breakthroughs replaced curated collections. It was a living metaphor: if you want to accelerate humanity, you must accelerate yourself first. Drop the ballast. Remove the distractions. Shed the unnecessary. People began to see this principle reflected in unexpected ways. Students cited him as an example in classrooms. Entrepreneurs shared his story on podcasts. Social media influencers discussed the philosophy of minimalism aligned with purpose, citing Elon not as an ascetic but as a visionary. The paradox was fascinating. By giving up everything, he had gained more influence, more inspiration, more reach than ever before. It was proof that liberation, when intentional, is more powerful than accumulation. Elon himself was aware of this phenomenon. He did not court it, did not strategize it, did not seek validation. But he saw that a life lived deliberately, aligned with mission over comfort, had a resonance beyond the individual. His choices had the potential to ripple outward, affecting not only companies and projects but the broader human mindset. In interviews, he often framed his philosophy simply: you don't need more things. You need more focus. You don't need more comfort. You need more clarity. The future will not wait for you to settle into luxury. And then there were the practicalities. With fewer possessions, logistics became simpler. Travel became lighter, decisions about daily routines were easier, and mobility increased dramatically. He could show up anywhere, work anywhere, and direct operations without the friction of attachment. Some suggested that this was extreme, even reckless. Elon responded with a grin: the friction is what kills ideas, not the risk. As time passed, Elon's radical lifestyle and philosophy began intersecting with his most ambitious projects yet. Plans for Mars colonization accelerated. AI research became more intense. Solar energy solutions expanded faster than ever. And in every meeting, every project, the principle remained: minimize what is unnecessary, maximize what matters. It was a living experiment. And the world was watching. Even as Elon's possessions disappeared, his inner world grew increasingly complex. Without material anchors, he was forced to confront every aspect of himself: fears, ambitions, doubts, and desires. He described it as a kind of self-audit, one where he stripped away layers of comfort to see what remained at the core: vision, purpose, and an unrelenting drive to push humanity forward. There were moments of loneliness. Spaces that once felt alive with objects now felt hollow. But rather than retreat into nostalgia or regret, Elon reframed these moments as opportunities. He learned to be comfortable with discomfort, to let the absence of physical belongings sharpen his mental and emotional resilience. His team noticed subtle shifts in him. Conversations became more direct, more deliberate. Decisions that once took hours of debate were now made in minutes. Elon no longer felt the need to justify his actions or pad his time with rituals of comfort. His clarity became contagious. Engineers, designers, and executives found themselves more focused, more willing to challenge assumptions, and more attuned to the overarching mission. It was as though by removing physical clutter, Elon had removed mental clutter, not just for himself but for everyone around him. The atmosphere at his companies became electric, each idea and decision carrying more weight because there was less distraction, less hesitation. Yet the journey was not purely logical or operational. There was an emotional depth to Elon's decision, a recognition of the ephemeral nature of life and the fleeting impact of possessions. He often reflected on the transience of wealth and luxury, understanding that these things, while temporarily satisfying, ultimately offered little permanence. "I've seen it all," he said once to a close friend. "I've had homes that could swallow a city, cars that outrun imagination, art that would make a museum blush. But at the end of the day, they are just things. They do not create legacy. They do not save humanity. They do not launch rockets. In these reflections, a quiet wisdom emerged, one that few had seen before in the public Elon Musk. It was not a rejection of wealth, it was a redefinition of it. True wealth, he realized, was measured not in possessions but in impact, in the magnitude of ideas transformed into reality. This philosophy began manifesting in unexpected ways. Elon's companies started experimenting with more daring projects, pushing the boundaries of technology and sustainability. SpaceX rockets carried increasingly ambitious payloads, Tesla vehicles incorporated cutting-edge innovations, and Neuralink made strides that many had deemed impossible. Observers noted the correlation: the less Elon owned, the more he seemed to accomplish. It was as if each object given up added energy to his mission, a paradoxical form of compounding growth. The public began to see his choices not as eccentricities but as a roadmap for intentional living, an extreme, yes, but a roadmap nonetheless. Social media amplified the story. Articles circulated about Elon's minimalist lifestyle, highlighting the contrast between a billionaire who gave up everything and the masses chasing possessions as symbols of status. Interviews and podcasts explored his philosophy, framing it as a lesson in prioritization, resilience, and visionary thinking. You don't have to sell everything to learn from him, commentators said. But his willingness to detach from material wealth reminds us that clarity and focus are more valuable than any object. And yet, Elon didn't seek attention for this choice. He never positioned it as moral superiority or an aspirational trend. It was simply a practical, strategic, and philosophical decision, one that allowed him to serve a mission far larger than himself. On the personal side, Elon's relationships evolved too. Friends who once judged his decisions began to understand their depth. Colleagues noticed his presence was less encumbered by ego, more grounded in collaboration and shared purpose. Even his family came to respect the clarity of his vision, recognizing that this was not a rejection of love or connection, but a redirection of energy toward humanity's future. He became a teacher without words, demonstrating through actions the power of radical focus. The principle was simple yet profound: let go of what weighs you down. Commit to what lifts you higher. At night, Elon often reflected on the broader implications. Humanity itself, he mused, carries unnecessary weight, traditions, inefficiencies, attachments that slow progress. By modeling personal detachment, he was also modeling a principle that could scale: shedding what no longer serves, embracing what drives innovation, and prioritizing mission over comfort. It was a subtle revolution, not through legislation or rhetoric, but through lived example. And it was working. More than ever, engineers, entrepreneurs, and young visionaries began asking themselves, what could I accomplish if I let go of the weight I carry? Even Elon acknowledged the challenges. Sacrifice is never easy, and detachment is not inherently joyful. There were nights of doubt, moments when the absence of possessions felt stark, when the world's expectations pressed heavily on him. But he reframed these challenges as part of the journey. Each moment of discomfort became a test, each obstacle an opportunity to strengthen resolve. He said once in a rare, candid interview, "The hardest part is not losing things. The hardest part is confronting what you thought you needed and realizing it's holding you back from what you were meant to do." As Elon moved forward, the world began to shift in tandem. A subtle cultural reflection emerged. People started questioning their own attachment to objects, comfort, and status. Discussions around minimalism, intentional living, and prioritization gained new resonance. Elon's actions, while extreme, highlighted a truth many sensed but rarely acted upon: liberation often requires sacrifice, and impact often demands focus. And for Elon Musk, sacrifice and focus were not abstract concepts, they were the very tools that allowed him to shape the future. Elon's radical detachment began to show results that no one could ignore. The absence of possessions and distractions allowed him to operate with a kind of clarity that few had ever witnessed. Projects that had lingered in conceptual stages for years now moved forward with astonishing speed. Decisions were made instantly, backed by his experience but unburdened by hesitation or fear. At SpaceX, the team noticed it immediately. Designs that previously had taken months of debate were finalized in days. Elon's presence on the factory floor was electric. Every interaction, every question, every suggestion felt sharper, more intentional. Engineers said it was as if the entire organization had absorbed his focus, reflecting it back in ways that accelerated innovation. Tesla followed suit. With less time spent on personal indulgences, Elon had more energy to devote to refining the autopilot system, optimizing battery technology, and steering the company toward sustainable energy solutions at a speed that seemed almost superhuman. The message was clear: when one sheds the unnecessary, extraordinary productivity emerges. But the impact wasn't only operational. It was cultural, emotional, even spiritual. Elon's extreme lifestyle choices began inspiring a movement of thought, a subtle shift in values for people all over the world. Influencers, journalists, and even ordinary individuals began reflecting on the things that weighed them down: physical possessions, yes, but also mental clutter, emotional baggage, and societal expectations. Elon had unwittingly become a model of intentional living, demonstrating that freedom comes not from accumulation, but from conscious prioritization. He showed that by giving up what doesn't serve your purpose, you gain the ability to devote yourself fully to what truly matters. The spiritual undertones were not lost on observers who looked beyond the headlines. Minimalism and detachment have long been principles taught by sages and visionaries throughout history. Elon, without claiming any spiritual mantle, embodied these truths in a modern, highly visible way. His journey reminded people that liberation is a choice, and focus is a practice, one that requires courage, discipline, and a willingness to confront discomfort head-on. Even in interviews, his words carried weight: comfort can be an anchor. Possessions can tie you down. But if your goal is to change the world, or even humanity itself, then you must be willing to move lightly, to act freely, and to focus relentlessly. There were moments of human vulnerability too. Letting go of possessions meant letting go of symbols of security, familiarity, and identity. Elon admitted that some nights were hard, that he occasionally missed certain comforts. But he reframed these moments as lessons, understanding that true resilience comes from facing uncertainty and moving forward anyway. It's not about lacking, he explained once. It's about choosing what matters. A bed, a chair, a house, they are conveniences. But the future? That is worth every sacrifice. As the months went on, the public began to see the payoff. SpaceX's launches became more ambitious, Tesla's technology more revolutionary, Neuralink projects more daring. Even the public discourse shifted. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about wealth, fame, or eccentricity, it was about mission, purpose, and impact. Elon had redefined what it meant to be a billionaire in the modern era, one whose wealth is measured not in dollars, but in the magnitude of change they create. Elon's approach also began influencing emerging leaders and entrepreneurs. Startups started emphasizing mission over comfort. Students and young engineers questioned the necessity of material accumulation when pursuing audacious goals. Books, podcasts, and online discussions proliferated, analyzing his philosophy of radical detachment and its role in fostering unprecedented innovation. It became increasingly evident that Elon's choice to sell everything was not just personal, it was a strategic catalyst for cultural transformation. By embodying a principle that few had dared to act on, he ignited a ripple effect across industries and communities worldwide. Even his personal interactions reflected the evolution. Conversations with colleagues, friends, and collaborators were stripped of pretense and superficiality. Time became a sacred resource, and Elon treated it as such. Every meeting, every discussion, every decision carried intention. His team noticed it immediately, without distractions, without the need to maintain appearances, the authenticity of his leadership became palpable. People were drawn to it. They were inspired by it. They worked harder, thought faster, and dared more because they saw the embodiment of courage and focus in Elon himself. The journey wasn't without challenges. Critics remained vocal. Some argued that extreme detachment was unsustainable, that it could lead to burnout or social isolation. Elon acknowledged these risks but reframed them. The risk of inaction, of compromise, or of distraction far outweighed the discomfort of letting go. He explained to a journalist, "Sacrifice is difficult. But it is temporary. The progress it enables, that can last for generations." And progress did not remain theoretical. Mars colonization plans accelerated with a precision and intensity that stunned even seasoned aerospace experts. Tesla achieved breakthroughs in battery longevity and autonomous technology. Neuralink's experiments advanced in ways that suggested profound implications for humanity's relationship with artificial intelligence. Every achievement traced back, in part, to the clarity Elon gained by shedding possessions. Each step forward was a testament to the principle that freedom and focus can be more powerful than any tangible asset. As Elon reflected on his journey, he often spoke of one profound realization: the real weight in life is not what you carry in your hands, but what you carry in your mind and spirit. Letting go of material burdens allowed him to lift heavier dreams, pursue grander visions, and invest fully in the destiny of humanity. He told a close confidant once, "I've traded comfort for possibility. I've traded security for acceleration. And in that trade, I've found a freedom that no mansion or car could ever give me." The world, slowly but surely, began to understand. Elon Musk, the billionaire who sold everything, was not a man escaping wealth. He was a man embracing mission. He was showing that liberation is not achieved by owning more, but by aligning entirely with what truly matters. And for those willing to look closely, his journey offered a blueprint. Clarity, focus, and the courage to let go are the foundations of extraordinary achievement. The final stage of Elon Musk's journey, where his radical detachment met tangible results, was nothing short of extraordinary. By shedding almost all personal possessions, Elon had created a life optimized for purpose, innovation, and impact. Every decision, every action, every waking hour was aligned with a singular mission: to accelerate humanity's progress and ensure the survival and advancement of life beyond Earth. At SpaceX, this focus translated into unprecedented achievements. Rockets launched with higher efficiency, reusable technologies were refined faster, and missions once considered decades away now became feasible in months. Engineers described an almost contagious energy. Elon's presence and clarity inspired a confidence that allowed teams to tackle problems with unprecedented creativity and speed. Tesla, too, benefited. Innovations in battery technology, autonomous systems, and sustainable energy solutions accelerated. Elon's willingness to detach from distraction created space for deep thinking, experimentation, and the pursuit of high-risk, high-reward breakthroughs that others might have deemed impossible. Yet, the transformation was not merely professional. Elon's personal life, stripped of material encumbrances, took on a form of radical simplicity that allowed him to engage with people, ideas, and challenges more fully. Without the noise of possessions or the burden of maintaining appearances, relationships became deeper, conversations became sharper, and every connection carried intention. This authenticity, this alignment of inner values with outer actions, became a powerful message for the world. True freedom is not measured by what you own, but by how fully you can dedicate yourself to what matters. Observers began to notice a ripple effect. Entrepreneurs, innovators, and young leaders started embracing aspects of Elon's philosophy. Startups questioned the necessity of luxury and overconsumption in favor of mission-driven focus. Individuals began reflecting on what in their own lives was distracting or unnecessary. Social media and thought leaders highlighted his approach, not as a prescriptive lifestyle, but as an inspiration, a demonstration of what's possible when one commits fully to purpose over comfort. Even skeptics eventually acknowledged the principle. Elon Musk's radical detachment was not about deprivation, it was about maximizing impact. By shedding distractions, he amplified his ability to shape the future. In quieter moments, Elon reflected on the deeper meaning of his journey. He realized that the real weight in life is not physical, it is mental, emotional, and spiritual. Possessions, while temporary, can anchor us to patterns that slow progress. Ideas, vision, and courage, however, are limitless. By detaching from the material, Elon was able to fully engage with what matters most: innovation, humanity, and the possibility of interplanetary civilization. He often said in interviews, "The real challenge isn't giving up things. It's giving yourself fully to what you were meant to do. Everything else is optional." The culmination of this philosophy was visible not only in his companies but in the inspiration it generated globally. People began to question their own attachments, seeking clarity, purpose, and intentionality in their lives. Students, engineers, and visionaries took note that it wasn't wealth or comfort that drove progress, it was focus, resilience, and the courage to prioritize mission above all else. And Elon Musk, through his actions, became the living proof. By the end of this radical journey, Elon had achieved something rare. He had aligned his life so completely with his mission that every choice reinforced it. Possessions were irrelevant. Comfort was secondary. Only purpose mattered. And that purpose, humanity's advancement, was limitless. In a public statement, he reflected, "I sold everything because I realized that what we carry in our hands is temporary, but what we create, what we advance, what we leave behind for future generations, that is eternal. I want my life to be a contribution, not a collection." And so, as Elon Musk continued his work, launching rockets, developing sustainable energy solutions, and inspiring millions, his message became clear: liberation from unnecessary weight creates space for extraordinary achievement. Focus, clarity, and purpose are the most valuable possessions one can ever have. And in this journey, there is an invitation to everyone who watches, listens, and reflects, to question what you hold on to prioritize what truly matters, and to live a life of intentional, fearless pursuit of your vision. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20. This completes the full script covering Elon Musk's radical choice to sell his possessions, his philosophical and spiritual journey, the operational and cultural impact on his companies, and the broader inspiration for the world. Elon Musk's voice came through with a tone that was both firm and reflective. "I have decided